Hey, Astrocrits, and welcome back. This is your weekly horoscope for March 8th through March 14th of 2021. So, as we come into this week of March 8th through March 14th of 2021, we are starting to see some things shift forward. As we're coming into the 8th of March, the moon will start out here in the sign of Sagittarius, and it will start to clear out through the rest of this sign. We started out with this moon in Sagittarius last week in this nakshatra of Mula, which is all about roots. What are you grounded in? And this is a great time to ground yourself, to meditate, to go deep within. Some of you having some visions that are coming up, some of you having some very vivid dreams that are coming up during this point. This is connected to K2. And so this is taking us to our very roots. Some of us connecting with our ancestors, some of us connecting with our past lives during this time. So, huge time for you to focus on this grounding and this meditation work as we're starting to shift towards the end of the zodiac here. On the 9th of March, we're going to see this energy continue. We're here in Purva Ashada. And so now this becomes a great time to start focusing on moving forward, using your intuition, your foresight on where are you going? What are the things in your life that are most precious that you want to accomplish? And so a theme of victory starts to come in as we're starting to move forward here in this week. From there, we're going to shift forward also into Atera, Ashada, and Capricorn as well. Are you going to succeed? Are you going to see victory for your results? Or are you going to see failure? Either way, this becomes a great time of accepting where you are along your journey, taking the failures, taking the successes, and using this to create something new, using this to start moving forward. So again, we have a huge focus here on using your intuition, using your roots, using your ancestral ties and connections, what you know, to move forward, to move ahead, to make some action happen in your life. Now, as we move forward into the of, into the 10th of March, we're going to see the moon shift into the Shravana Nakshatra. And so this becomes about that listening ear. What is your intuition telling you? So, again, there's a lot of intuitiveness coming through in this week as far as what we need to get done, how we're moving forward, what we're going to use as our foundation to start to make things happen in our lives. So, a lot of this forward movement that's happening here coming off of last week, where we were sort of stuck here in this post shadow phase of Mercury. Now, as we come into the 12th, we are going to start to shift here into the Dhanishta Nakshatra, where this becomes about marching to the beat of your own drum, following your karmic duty in life. And so, what is your purpose? What is your calling? Being in tune with this, especially during this time, is a huge focus coming into this week. Now, also on the 12th, we will see Mercury shift into Aquarius. So, this is something that we saw before, obviously, before this retrograde phase where it shifted back to Capricorn. But now we're starting to move ahead, starting to push forward. So, a lot of the things that we've revisited, time to start implementing these things, putting these things back into motion, because the very next day on the 13th, Mercury is leaving post shadow. This is the aftermath that is ending. Time to start moving forward after we've been planning to put these pieces back together, after we've been planning and strategizing on how we want to move ahead. So, this review period and this post review period that we've been in here in Mercury is coming to a close now. Time to start moving forward, and especially in the sign of Aquarius, which is connected to the future, your hopes, your dreams, your wishes, and especially here in this Nakshatra of Dhanishta, where this is about marching to the beat of your own drum, following your karmic duty and purpose in life. And so this really is a time of pushing forward, moving ahead with your purpose in life. For those of you who have been sitting here in contemplation, it's time to start looking ahead at the things that you want to fall into place moving forward. Start to push ahead towards your plans and your dreams. And especially as on the 14th, we are going to enter into a new sign. But before this, on the 13th, we are going to have a new moon, and I will do a separate video on this new moon that we're having in the sign of Aquarius. This is going to happen in the nakshatra of Shadabasha. And so there's a lot here in terms of your spiritual path, your calling, and focusing forward on this. This whole theme playing into this entire week. Now, on the 14th, the moon will shift into Pisces before the sun will then shift into Pisces as well. Where now we're moving into the last sign of the zodiac here. Time to focus on things that need closure, that need completion, as we're coming into this Pisces phase here. But also, more than that, this is a time to tap into your inspiration, tap into your imagination, tap into your spiritual world. So, this Pisces energy pulling us into another dimension of thought, pulling that deep inspiration through, connecting us to our spiritual calling as we're coming into this week, wrapping things up. This is pushing us towards our spiritual purpose and calling. And of course, this is getting us ready for as we begin to shift into the season of spring. So a lot here that is being wrapped up and closed up here at the end of this winter season that's coming to an end. This Pisces season is all about the things that you need to complete, that you need to work on a subconscious level, that you need to come to full closure with before pushing ahead into this brand new season that is coming here towards the end of March. Now, for those of you who have a fire rising or fire moon, this is your weekly horoscope. So we're going to start off here with the sign of Aries. For those of you with an Aries Ascendant or Aries Moon, the sun will be shifting into Pisces at the end of the week here. And so this is a sun moving back into your 12th house. This is very deep awareness. The sun will be the lamp that lights up your 12th house of your subconscious, your spirituality, your dream world. And so this becomes very vivid coming into this time here, where your focal point will be to tap deeper within yourself. Coming into this week, those of you with an Aries Ascendant or Aries Moon, this is a great time to meditate. This is a great time to have your dream journal ready. This is a great time to start to look inward. Anything that isn't healed or completed, time to look into these things and to really go deep within the subconscious, to look at these things, to review these things, to do the inner work. And for a lot of you, this is a very creative time where you can use your imagination to work towards your goals and projects. Remember that the sun is in the 12th, which is in direct opposition with your 6th house. And so this becomes a great time to use your inspiration, use your imagination to bring about your projects, your work, your responsibility. This is also a time where you want to be careful with your health because the sun is back in this axis of your physical and your mental health in the 12th. And so with the sun here, this can be very harsh depending on what your actual sun is doing in your natal chart and how everything is set up. You want to be a little bit careful here. Some impulsive decisions can lead to difficulty in your health. This sun back in the 12th, sun really doesn't want to be here. It wants to be out in the open, expressing itself. And so this can be very challenging with your health. Also, for those of you with an Aries Ascendant or Aries Moon, we are going to start off this week with the moon in your 9th house of Sagittarius. And so For those of you with an Aries ascendant, the moon is going to move through your ninth, your 10th, your 11th, and your 12th house this week. And so this is a great time to work on your projects, to work on your goals, your dreams, your vision during this time. Some of you are focused on your education. Some of you are planning for the future. Some of you really focusing in on some projects, especially those that involve writing, that involve journaling, that involve communication. This is the moon sitting in your ninth house, aspecting over to that third house of communication. So, this becomes a really great time to work on your education and any sort of projects and skills that you have. This could also be a time of travel. The moon is fluctuating and sitting in this ninth house of travel. So even though we're here in this pandemic, some of you could be moving around, doing different things. Some of you could be doing this for your work life. This is going to be a moon that is shifting into your 10th house of career as well. So you could find yourself doing some sort of work that involves movement, change, travel coming into this week. The moon shifting into your 10th house, this can really stir up some changes in your career life. This can even bring about some unstableness in your home life. So you could be focused heavily in your work and taking a lot away from that home environment where there's not enough going on there. The moon is going to shift also up into that 11th house. And so this is a great time of looking at your higher visions, your higher goals for the future. A lot of you are looking forward towards what you want to accomplish. And this is in that opposition with your fifth house as well. So this becomes a great time again to work on those big goals, those big projects, anything that you're trying to create. Some of you working in groups and teams on projects during this time, especially as in that 11th house, we're going to have a new moon. So you could have a new idea, a new vision, a new project, a new goal that you're working on. You can work on this in a large group setting. You can work on this with the advice of an elder. You could have some advice come from an elder sibling during this time to help you towards any sort of project. We also have Mercury that is going to shift up in that 11th house as well. So this becomes a great time to tap into your creative skills, any sort of projects and goals that you are trying to accomplish during this week. Now, for those of you who have a Leo ascendant or Leo moon, we're going to start off this week with the moon in your fifth house. And so this can be a great time where you're focused on your children, where you're focused on your career. The moon is going to shift from your fifth to your sixth through your seventh, and then over into your eighth house. And so this becomes a great time for business. This becomes a great time for finances. And you may find yourself working and focused heavily on finances as towards the end of the week, the sun is going to be back in that eighth house of shared resources, aspecting over to your second house of your fixed assets. And so this can be a good time for money management, for focusing on any sort of business or partnership. The sun, before it goes into your eighth, will be in your seventh house of partners. And so this becomes a really great time to focus on business, on partnerships, and how you're going to handle and sort out your finances. You can also acquire a lot of gains, especially towards the beginning of this week, as the moon will start out there in your fifth house, looking at your 11th house of gains. And so you can attain a lot of support, a lot of gains from your efforts, from your intellect, from your creative abilities, any sort of projects that you're working towards during this week. You also need to be careful with your health. The moon is going to shift through your sixth house of your physical health, aspecting over to that 12th house of your mental health. And so you really want to be careful here. Some things can fluctuate depending on your eating habits, and the moon is a significator of sweets. So you do want to be careful coming into this week with any sort of eating patterns that can disturb your health. But also with the moon coming into this sixth house, you could find yourself really wanting to serve others, to help others. This moon is very sensitive and it's coming into this sixth house of service, where you may feel the need to be supportive of others, to help others, to support others at this time. Mercury is also going to be in your seventh house of partnerships. So you could find yourself communicating a lot, doing a lot of deals, a lot of business contracts. You are looking for a lot of intellectual connection during this time, a lot of communication where you're able to be technical, able to get things done. And this can involve a new project, as you're going to have a new moon in your seventh house of partnership as well. So you could be working on a new project with a partner. You could be getting some advice, some intellectual advice from a partner on a particular project that you're trying to start and create during this time. And this is going to affect you overall. Anything that you're working on right now can significantly change your entire personality. This is facing your first house. And so a lot of you are growing and changing and working on new things that are taking you to new places in your life. For those of you with a Sagittarius Ascendant or Sagittarius Moon, we're starting off the week with the moon in your very own sign. So the moon will come into your first house following off of that last week, and it will be aspecting over to your seventh house. So a lot of you will be going through some fluctuations and changes within yourself. You may be a little bit more moody, more sensitive, looking for more connection and interaction coming into this week. And this can significantly affect your partner. So, any sort of changes that you are trying to make regarding yourself, it is important that you are communicating this to anyone that you're interacting with one on one coming into this week. A lot of these fluctuations can negatively affect your partner, depending on how everything is lined up here. But you can find yourself changing your appearance, changing your look, changing your attitude, changing your entire direction in life coming into this week. As the moon is fluctuating, there's a lot that's on your mind, that you're contemplating, that you're going through at this time. Now, the moon is also going to move through your second house, your third house, and your fourth house. And so a lot of you are, again, focused on connection coming into this week. A lot of you focus on your connection with your family and your siblings. For some of you, this can also be a time of travel. The moon is going to move into that third house, which deals with short distance travel, also aspecting over to your ninth house, which deals with foreign travel. So there could be something involved in travel. This could have a lot to do with your work life, as Mercury is also going to be in your third house as well. And Mercury is a karka for business. So some of you doing some sort of negotiation or deal or some sort of work that could involve some change in travel, especially as the moon and Mercury will be together and with a new moon. So a lot of you making some new changes. This can involve writing, communication, any sort of projects. This could involve your education, any sort of teaching or classes, or looking for a new instructor at this time can be a huge influence coming into this week. Now, the moon will be in your fourth house. This is great for your connection to your mother and your home, where this can be a very sentimental, emotional time. A lot of you may be connected to your past, looking into past things that are coming up in your memories at this time. There could be some fluctuation in the home, though, so you want to be careful here. You can have some fluctuation in your connection to family coming into this week. But the moon is going to be in opposition with your 10th and 11th houses. And so a lot of your gains and your accomplishments can fluctuate a little bit depending on some of the emotional factors that are going on in your life. So some of you may need to serve your family a little bit more. Some of you may feel the need to be more involved with your family, and you can see some fluctuation in your actual work life and your gains. So you want to focus heavily in this area. And with the moon coming into that second house, you also want to be careful with your diet. That second house represents the mouth, and the moon is highly changeable. So some of you could be having a lot of movement and change going on where you're on the go, and you could be eating on the go too, which can be very detrimental to your health. So want to be careful there. A lot of things that can change and fluctuate as far as your wealth, because not only is that moon going to be looking at your 11th and 10th houses, but the moon is also going to be looking at your 8th house and your 7th house coming into this week as well. Now, moving on to the water signs. So, if you are a Cancer Ascendant or Cancer Moon, we're going to be starting off this week with the moon in your 6th house. And so, there can be some fluctuation in your health coming into this week. You want to really stay focused on any sort of motivational goals, any sort of workouts, anything along those lines. The moon can come in here and fluctuate a lot of things, and the moon is sitting in your 6th house of physical health, but it's also looking in opposition over to that 12th house of your mental health as well. So, some factors here can come into play where you may be a little bit more tired, a little bit less inclined to want to work out or to focus on health matters. Want to keep an eye out, a focus on this area. But with the moon coming into the 6th house, this can also make a lot of you very caring towards animals, towards any sort of cause, a lot of you wanting to serve and help out others during this week. So you can find yourself more emotionally involved in terms of actually helping and supporting people. And this could be connected to your work life, or this could just be in general where you want to serve others, to help others. There's more of an emotional pull, and especially with the moon being your chart ruler. So this is a huge focus. Now, from there, the moon is going to shift into your 7th house, looking directly back at your 1st house. So you can see some fluctuations in your partnerships. Maybe some people are changing, doing things that are changing in their lives, where you feel this sort of fluctuation in your connections, where some people can be very off and on. You can find that there's some changes that are unsettling for you in your connections. And so this is a time really to make sure that you are emotionally fulfilled within yourself. This can really help you because there can be a lack of that in your actual relationships with all this changing of the moon, which goes through phases and cycles. So this can be very difficult depending on how your chart actually looks for you. From there, the moon is going to shift into your 8th house. And so this is where, again, a lot of fluctuations can happen. The moon is fluctuating factor, and it's coming into your 8th house of crisis, of ups and downs. And so a lot of you can find yourselves going through some major changes coming into this week. The moon is also going to look at your 2nd house. And so you may want to focus on your eating habits as well. These things can fluctuate and change a lot. Also, there can be a factor of sweets. The moon is also connected to sweets as well. But the moon is going to be looking at your house of fixed assets from your house of joint finances. So there can be some sudden fluctuations and changes within your actual finances. But also, a lot of you can find that some changes can land you into a place where you are gaining a lot of money. Mercury is also here in this 8th house, which is a karka for business. So this can be a really great time for business, for making money, for managing money at this time. And for some of you, this could be a time where you actually gain a lot with the new moon sitting here in this 8th house. A lot of the shifts and changes that you're going through are taking you to a new chapter in your life. So you want to look at all the factors in your chart, but this can really bring about some new changes that can help you in your life in a big way. Towards the end of the week, the sun is going to be in your 9th house, and this will be the last place that the moon will visit. And so from this position, the moon is going to be looking at your 3rd house of communication from your 9th house of higher education. So a lot of you can find yourselves changing your mind a little bit, changing your opinions, changing your values. And so this could be an interesting time where you find yourself stumbling upon new knowledge, new belief systems that can change your whole outlook and opinion on life. And so you could see a little bit of a change or fluctuation in your philosophy in your value system during this time. The moon also looking at that third house of communication. You could be a little bit more empathetic in your communication, where there can be a little bit more emotion there. If you are a writer, this can be very good for you, where you can write in a way that conveys a lot of emotion and grabs a lot of the attention of others during this time. With the sun here in this ninth house, this also becomes a great time of teaching others, of giving guidance. The sun, remember, is the karka for the father, sits here in this ninth house. A lot of you can give a lot of great guidance and support towards others. You could also have a great connection to your father at this time, where you are pulling in a lot of information, a lot of knowledge that is very helpful and supportive to you. So for those of you who have a Scorpio Ascendant or Scorpio Moon, we're starting off this week with the moon in your second house. And so you can see a little bit of a fluctuation in your actual finances, in your security at this time. This could be good or bad, depending on factors in your chart. Of course, the moon originally is a functional benefic for your chart, but you want to look at what's going on in your actual chart. What is the moon doing for you? But the moon is coming into this second house, where you can acquire a lot of wealth, you can lose a lot of wealth. There can be sudden fluctuations here, especially because the moon is also looking at that eighth house of crisis and ups and downs. You can see some fluctuations happening here in your actual finances at this time. This also is a time where you may want to focus on your eating habits. The moon is coming into the second house, which is connected to the mouth. And so some of you could have some fluctuating eating habits that could actually be detrimental to you as well. The moon can also be a factor of sweets. So you want to be careful in this area, where some of you can have some moments that can affect your actual health. That eighth house, a lot of people don't know this, but the eighth house deals with long-term health factors. So even though the sixth house is illnesses, that eighth house can include long-term illnesses, as it's the house of crisis. So you want to be careful with any sort of decisions along the lines of your health coming into this week. Some things can be changing and fluctuating in this area. From there, the moon is going to shift into your third house. And so this is coming into the house of communication. And so some of you can be a little bit more empathetic and a little bit more emotional in your actual communication coming into this week. And so you could find yourselves wanting to connect more. You could find yourselves, especially for those of you who have siblings, you could find yourself more connected to your siblings, more attached to your early upbringing during this time, your actual family life. And with the moon here in the third house, this could make you a little bit changeable in your opinions and in your actual skills. Some of you picking up different talents, especially musical, with the moon being a creative factor. Some of you could feel more inclined towards music and arts coming into this week. But the moon is going to look at that ninth house of your higher education, of your projects. So you could be working on some sort of artistic project. You could be using that energy of the moon to actually channel a lot of the emotion and creativity into the things that you're working on. And some of you can be very emotional about your actual opinions and beliefs, as the moon is facing that ninth house. Now, from there, the moon is going to shift into your fourth house. Again, a lot of you are going to be connected to family at this time, but you can also see some fluctuations happen in your family. And so you could see some particular ups and downs going on. Some of you could be heavily tied to your work life, and you could see fluctuations in your actual connection to home happening, or it could be vice versa. Remember, the moon is sitting here in the fourth, looking at the 10th. And so you could find yourself connected to home, and you could see fluctuations in your work as well. Now, Mercury's also here in your fourth house. So again, a lot of communication around your home life. But this can also be a great time for you to pull a lot of deep information up. This could be a time for you to sit in isolation, to learn, to pick up a lot of knowledge that can support you in your career moving forward. The new moon, also here in the fourth house, could bring you some peace of mind. This is a new moon in your fourth house of inner peace and home life. And so you could find yourself a little bit more comfortable. This could also be a time where you're getting a new car, or you're getting a new home, or you're getting something new within your home. Something's changing here coming into this week. This is also going to be a new moon facing your career, though. So some of you could find that you have a new opening in career, something that you're doing in your career life that makes you happy. So some of you could be doing something on the side, also that makes you happy that you're working towards. From there, the moon is going to shift over into your fifth house. And so, again, this is a very creative week for a lot of you. The moon is a creative factor coming into the fifth house of creativity and education. So a lot of you could be working on creative projects. You could do very well in this area. The moon is going to be looking at your 11th house. So you could actually get a lot of support for some of your projects, for your creative endeavors during this week. If you have children, you could also see some fluctuation in this area. A lot of you will be very emotional and very much wanting to connect with your children during this time. This could also be a time where your education fluctuates a little bit. So you want to pay attention to some of your goals and the things that you're trying to achieve at this time. The moon can sort of pull you a little bit, with the moon being about phases and cycles. There can be some shifts happening in this area. But the sun will be in this fifth house as well coming into the end of the week. So this can be very powerful where you can do very well in your education. With the sun here, you can achieve a lot in your education. You can reach a high status and reach your goals in a big way with the sun lighting up this house and aspecting over to that 11th house of gains. Now, for those of you with a Pisces Ascendant or Pisces Moon, we're starting off the week with the moon in your 12th house. And so this is a great time to focus on business. There can be some changes and fluctuations, but for a lot of you, there's already going to be that. Because remember that 10th house for you is controlled by Sagittarius, which is a changeable, movable energy. So a lot of you are already changing and moving in your career life. But this can be a great time to work on anything creative with the moon coming in here. A lot of you using your inspiration, using your talents and gifts to really strive in your career. This is facing that fourth house. So you can find a lot of deep inspiration if you are going inward into a space of peace and quiet. You can gather a lot of knowledge and inspiration that can really help in your career life. From there, the moon is going to shift up into your 11th house. And so a lot of connection can happen here. The moon is in the 11th house, where you could find yourself very much emotionally connected and invested with a lot of people. The moon is also a popularity factor, so a lot of people could want to be around you at this time with the moon there. The moon is going to be in opposition with your fifth house from that 11th house. So you could do very well in any sort of creative projects, any sort of vision and inspiration that you're gaining. You can put this towards your actual projects and creative talents and skills and do very well in this area. If you are in education, you can do very well in this area where you get a lot of ideas, a lot of insight from this moon in the 11th house. From there, the moon is going to shift. And another thing I wanted to add is that some of you can find some connection with your elders or your elder siblings from this position of moon in the 11th. Now, from there, the moon is going to shift back into your 12th house. And this is where we will see Mercury and a new moon happening. So, this is very interesting to have a new moon back in your 12th house. This could be a great time to have a new habit of a spiritual practice. This could be a great time to develop a new creative skill that helps you in your work life. And so, for some of you, if you're under stress, if you're having difficulty, this could be a good time for meditation, to go inward through this 12th house. This could also be a great time to pull some creative vision and inspiration out of the subconscious and pour it into your work life. This could also be a great time where you find yourself actually disconnecting and detaching, where you're getting some new information, some new news that's coming in spiritually, psychically for a lot of you through this 12th house factor. So this could be a very psychic time where you see a lot of signs. This could be a good time to have a dream journal to pay attention to some of these symbols and signs that are popping up in your life. With the moon sitting in this 12th house and Mercury, two fluctuating factors, and looking at that sixth house, we're also going to have the sun in here as this is a new moon. You want to be careful with your health. This could be an area where you are in escapist patterns, where you are doing things to escape and you're doing things in secret. This 12th house is a very private house that could potentially affect your health. So, anything along the lines of overindulgence or escapism, you want to be careful in that area. But ultimately, this becomes a great time to pull some deep insight and inspiration out of the subconscious and use it in your work life. From there, the moon is going to shift into your first house. So you could go through a lot of shifts and fluctuations, not only in your career life and your status there, but also personality wise. A lot of you could find yourselves a little bit moody in this week, a little bit more sensitive and empathetic. Some shifts and changes could happen where you want to change your identity, your appearance, some things here. So you want to make sure you're communicating with your partner or any sort of business partnerships or interactions that you have. This is going to be in opposition to your seventh house of other people. So just make sure that you're keeping the people that you're connected to informed of these shifts and changes that can happen during this week. The sun is also going to be in your first house, which is a great position. A lot of you are going to come into the end of this week with a lot of confidence, a lot of charisma to go after your goals, to make things happen in your business life, or to make things happen even in your relationships. This looking at your seventh house, but this could be a huge factor in your business life with that seventh house aspect. You can do very well with the sun here, giving you that confidence, that self esteem to go after the things that you want in life. Now, looking at the air signs for this weekly horoscope. For those of you who have a Gemini ascendant or Gemini moon, we're starting off this week with the moon in your seventh house of partnerships. And so you could see some change and fluctuation in your partnerships. Your partner could be very off and on. Your partner could need a bit of space. Your partner could be overly emotionally invested into you. So there can be a lot of mood shifts and fluctuations happening with the moon here in your seventh house of partnership. So this is really a great time where you need to adapt and be adjustable to the different changes that are happening within your actual partnerships. And again, this house of partnership is not just about marriage, but any sort of interactions that you have, you want to be adaptable, you want to be able to adjust to some of the changes that are happening here. And so, for a lot of you, it's very good to have a sense of emotional security within yourself and not necessarily seeking a lot from your partner, as your partner can go through some changes during this particular time. From there, the moon is going to shift into your eighth house. So, again, more changes and fluctuations happening. But again, you want to use your Gemini skills to adapt to these different changes happening. But this could show some fluctuations in your wealth and finances. The moon is already a fluctuating factor, and this eighth house is all about crisis and ups and downs. So, you could find yourself going through some intense transformations. You could find some things regarding health. A lot of people don't know this, but the eighth house is long term health problems. And that second house is all about your food intake. So these two things are working together. So you want to be careful of your actual health and your actual eating habits, especially more so eating than actual other habits or routines that you have. You want to focus on this coming into this week. Some of you a bit changeable and flexible in your eating with Cancer controlling that second house. So you want to be careful coming into this week, of course. But some of you can see some fluctuations in your actual wealth because this is the moon in your eighth house of joint finances and aspecting over to your second house of fixed assets. So you want to make sure that you are discussing any sort of financial things that you are planning around with your partner Some things can fluctuate or change unexpectedly. So you want to have a plan. You want to be able to work through any sort of issues that could arise in this area. Now, from there, the moon is going to shift into your ninth house. So you could see your beliefs or your opinions fluctuating a little bit. Some of you opening up your minds to some new possibilities. Some of you could be doing some changing as far as your education, where you're learning some new things coming into this week. You could be very emotional about your actual beliefs. So you want to be careful a little bit in your communication. This moon in the ninth house is going to aspect over to your third house of communication. And so you want to be careful with your beliefs, as you can be very emotional in this area. Now, also, we're going to see Mercury and a new moon happening in this ninth house. So, again, you can do very well in education during this week. You could find yourself learning something new, picking up something new, and this could lead you towards a new project, a new goal. You could be working on something new as far as a project that involves writing or communication during this time. You could be picking up a new language, a new study coming into this week. Now, from there, the moon is going to shift into your 10th house of career. So you can see some shifts and changes happening in your career life. Some of you could be taking on a new career. You could actually have to shift and adjust to some things happening into your career life. Or there could be some fluctuation that involves traveling or moving or doing something in a different way in your career life. And this is going to aspect over to your fourth house. So this can affect your actual home life. And this could bring you a little bit of stress and difficulty. That fourth house is the house of inner peace and happiness. And so some of you could be a little bit stressed, a little bit unhappy with some of these changes, but this could be something that could be very promising for you as well. Anything creative, anything that involves emotion, any sort of projects that are artistic, that are musically inclined could do very well during this week. The sun is also going to be sitting in this 10th house also. So you could do very well in leadership positions in your career. And so this could be also a changing factor where some of you may be leveling up, moving up in your career life. And this could potentially take away some of your time that you have in your home environment or the downtime that you have to have some peace and quiet. Now, for those of you who have a Libra ascendant or Libra moon, we're starting off this week with the moon in your third house of Sagittarius. And so this could be a time where you're a little bit more empathetic and sentimental in your communication. This could be a time where you're looking to connect more, especially with your siblings or anyone close to you coming into this week. This can be very emotional for you. From there, the moon is going to aspect over to your ninth house. And so this could be a great time to work on any sort of projects that involve using your communication skills, using your thoughts, your ideas, your intellect. You can do very well in this area. There could be some sort of changes involving your education at this time. There could be travel because the moon is a fluctuating factor and it's sitting in this third house of your short distance travel in opposition to your ninth house of foreign travel. So this could also be a factor coming into this week. You could find yourself traveling for a job purpose, for some sort of project. There could be some movement, change, fluctuation that is involved in working towards your education or projects coming into this week. From there, the moon is going to shift into your fourth house, and so some of you can be very much attached and sentimental to your home environment. You could find a lot of peace in your home, but this can also be a fluctuating factor because of the moon. So there could be some sudden changes happening in your home life, some changes with your connection to your mother at this time that need to be sorted out as well. And this can affect your career life. This is aspecting over to that 10th house where you could find yourself needing to make some changes in your career for the sake of your happiness. Some of you could be shifting jobs or careers that are more inclined with what your sole purpose is coming into this week. From there, the moon is going to shift into your fifth house of your education, your creativity, your children. And so this could be a time of actually working on creative projects. You could be working in a group as the moon is going to be aspecting over to your 11th house of large social circles. But you can also gain a lot from any sort of creative projects that you're working on. The moon is definitely a creative factor, and it's in this fifth house of creativity as well. So you could gain a lot of inspiration, a lot of creative talents, and you could be working on these things. And this can take you to a higher level. You can gain a lot from this, whether this is actually material wealth or some sort of prize that you are getting out of this. Now, also, we're going to see the new moon and Mercury here in the fifth. So, a lot of you are going to be starting new projects. You're going to be working on new ideas. You're going to be collaborating for some of you. All of this aspecting over to that 11th house of large social gains. So, some of you will get support in your projects. Some of you will be working in large group projects at this time, but there can be some difficulties around children with the moon, Mercury, and the new moon all in your fifth house. This can be a changing factor where there can be some difficult situations that pop up where you have to deal with your children in a new and unexpected way coming into this week. There could be actually the birth of a child, and this is something that I mentioned before in the last weekly horoscope. For some reason, this one keeps coming up. So, for some of you out there, there's something around the actual birth of a child that could take place as well as far as this goes. Now, from there, the moon is going to shift into your sixth house. You want to be careful of your health. This could require a lot of energy to work towards some sort of new task, new responsibility, especially with the sun that is going to be in the sixth house. You could be putting a lot of energy and focus into your work, into your service, into your responsibility. This could be a service to someone else because the moon is very emotional coming into the sixth house where you want to serve, you want to support during this time. And this is in opposition to your 12th house. So you do want to be careful of health factors, any sort of stress or difficulties that come up could affect your health as well, mentally or physically. This sixth house is your physical health, and it's opposing that 12th house of mental illnesses as well. So you want to make sure that you're getting the proper rest, that you're taking care of any sort of health factors, especially around digestion or exercise or habits that need to be put in place during this week. Now, for those of you who have an Aquarius Ascendant or Aquarius Moon, we're starting off this week with the moon in your 11th house. And so, a lot of you, your gains can fluctuate. This is a time where some of you can have some fluctuating relationships happening as well. The Sagittarius is a changeable sign in your 11th house, and the moon is a fluctuating factor. So some of you could be losing friends, gaining friends. Your connection to your friends can fluctuate. This could also be a time, though, when you're very focused on your goals and ambitions, though you may have many goals and ambitions coming into this week. But this could be a time of thinking of a new project, a new goal. This is aspecting over to that fifth house of creativity. So a lot of you could be starting to invest a lot into some sort of goal or project coming into this week as well. From there, the moon is going to shift into your 12th house. So, this is a health factor. You want to be careful. There can be some changes here. There can be some anxiety. There can be some depression coming in with the moon shifting back in the 12th. So, you want to make sure you're taking care of your health and your needs coming into this week. This could also be a very psychic week for you with the moon shifting back in the 12th. You could have very vivid dreams. You could have sudden symbols and messages coming up during this week. This could be a good time to meditate and to find some sort of peaceful practice. This is opposing that sixth house of conflict. So, for some of you, this can be a good time to get some peace of mind away from some of the stress and conflicts that can negatively be affecting your health coming into this week. From there, the moon is going to shift into your first house. This is where a lot of you are going through some major changes. This is Mercury and the moon in your first house, and we're also going to see a new moon here. And so a lot is happening here where a lot of you are changing your appearance. You're changing your identity. You are changing some major things in your life that is changing who you are as a whole with all of this fluctuation that's happening here in this first house. This can be a great time to work on improving yourself, to work on bettering yourself, and this can affect your relationships as well. This is a new moon and Mercury in opposition to your seventh house. So, communication and other factors can be better in your relationships based upon these changes or these new things that you're pursuing as far as your personal improvement and personal goals coming into this week. From there, the moon is going to end up in your second house, where this could be difficult. There can be some fluctuation in your finances and your actual security. This is sitting in that second house of your fixed assets and in opposition to the eighth house of joint finances. And so there can be a little bit of difficulty in your finances. This could be a good time to save, to store, to focus on not spending on impulse because the moon is an emotional factor coming into your second house of finances. Now, the moon also in the second house could be difficult around your health. You want to be careful. A lot of people don't know this, but again, that eighth house is long term health issues. So, even though we relate the sixth house and the 12th house and the first house typically with illnesses, the eighth house is the house of longevity too. So that eighth house does play a role in your health. So you want to be careful with any sort of difficulty around eating, digestion, intake. That second house is the house of your mouth, what you're taking in. So, your food intake, you want to be careful. There can be some fluctuations. Some of you may be on the go a lot, or you may be working a lot where you are eating on the go, or you're eating very quickly, making some difficult decisions and choices around your food that can negatively impact you, especially with the sun that's also going to be there in your second house as we shift into the sign of Pisces. You can see some difficulty around your eating habits. Again, the sun is a very powerful sign. It lights up this house. And so some of you could be overindulgent in this area of eating coming into this week. But also, as we come to the end of the week, you can actually see yourself focus more on your finances and your work life. And this can help you significantly with acquiring wealth. Remember that this is also the sun in an aspect to the eighth house. And so you may find that finances are difficult, things are fluctuating, but this could also fluctuate in a good way where things could go down and then they can go up again with that eighth house factor. So that was my horoscope for all zodiac signs. Now I'm going to go into the card for the week for all of you. So the card of the week here is from the Vedic Oracle deck, and this is Mercury. So, again, a lot of change that's happening for a lot of you, a lot of new things that are coming in, and a lot in terms of using your intellect and your communication skills coming into this week. For those of you with an earth sign, this is your weekly horoscope. So, coming into this week, for those of you with a Taurus Ascendant or Taurus Moon, we're starting out with the moon in your eighth house, a lot of fluctuation that's happening. And this can be very difficult for those of you with a Taurus ascendant. Of course, you have the most stable sign. And this is some difficulty around finances and, in particular, joint finances. So, you want to have a talk with your partner if you're in a business partnership, if you are in a romantic relationship, there could be difficulties in this area where there's fluctuation happening coming into this week. Things could go from negative to positive and up and down. A lot of movement happening in these areas of your finances and your security. From there, the moon is going to shift into your ninth house. And so from there, it will aspect over to your third house. This could be a good time to work on a creative project, especially if it involves communication. Musical talent, art talent, technical talents can be used during this time. You could also find yourself changing in education. You could be learning a new language. You could be learning something new in your field of education. And you could be very emotionally invested in any of your teachers, your counselors, your mentors, your father. You could get a lot of support during this time with the moon here in the ninth house. From there, the moon's going to shift into your 10th house of your career, your status. So you can gain a lot during this time. The moon becomes a fluctuating factor, but the moon is looking over at that fourth house where you can gain a lot of happiness from your work environment through some of these changes, especially with the new moon and Mercury sitting there in your 10th house of career. A lot of you can do very well in this area where you're working on a new project, you're getting new insight, new sort of changing situations that can happen here. Some of you could even get promoted. This 10th house is the house of status. And so some of you could reach a higher status at this time, especially with the sun that is also going to be in your 11th house of your accomplishments, your goals, your hopes and dreams. And so there's a spotlight here where some of you could do very well. You could have an increase, you could have a new position, you could be very successful in this area. The moon is also going to shift over into that 11th house as well. So you could see some fluctuations in your friendships, in your social circles at this time. But the moon also aspecting over to the fifth house, you could be working on some sort of creative group project during this time, something where you are applying your emotion and your creativity into a new project, a new goal in your life. For those of you with a Virgo moon or Virgo ascendant, we're starting off the week with the moon in your fourth house. So some of you thinking about the past, thinking about your home, emotionally connected to your mother coming into this week, but there can be some fluctuations in your home life. And so there could be some things to sort out here in your actual home environment where you're seeing some changes, some fluctuations. Some of you could be relocating or you could be making some actual changes within your home environment. The moon from there is also aspecting over to your 10th house. So this could affect your career life. You could be changing location for your career. You could simply be making some changes depending on how much time you're going to actually put into your home and your work life. There could be some balancing factors there that you need to work through. Moving forward, the moon is going to shift into your fifth house. And so this could be a great time to work on a new creative project, a new endeavor that you are working towards at this time. From there, the moon is going to aspect over to your 11th house. So you could get a lot of support from your elder siblings, from elders, or from a social circle when it comes to working on these projects. You could get a lot of inspiration, a lot of ideas from that 11th house where some of you have new hopes and dreams, new wishes, new plans, where you're focused heavily on this and you have a lot of work to do in this area. A lot of you could be fluctuating or changing in your education. You could be reaching new educational goals from this position. From there, the moon is going to shift into your sixth house. There is a new focus that needs to be put on your work life. So, again, a lot of changes could be happening, fluctuation affecting your actual career. You have Mercury, the new moon, in your sixth house. So a lot of you are entering into a new situation in terms of your work, where some of you may have to travel. This is aspecting over to your 12th house of foreign places. So it's possible that you are actually moving to a new location for work or you're traveling to a new workplace for a new project or a new work situation coming into this week. This is also a good time to focus on your health and your routines. There could be some fluctuation with the moon there, but a lot of you are forming new routines, new goals with Mercury and this new moon activating over to this sixth house. From there, the moon is going to shift into your seventh house of partnership, where you can see some fluctuation in your partners. This could be romantic, this could be business related, but this is going to affect you. So you want to make sure that your emotional security, your inner security is intact coming into this week because you can see some major fluctuations happening. You could have a new boss with the sun being the karka for authority and father figures coming into your seventh house of business partnerships. So again, some of you could be relocating to a new job. You could have more focus on your actual partner where you are putting more energy, putting more nurturing, more support into your partner. For those of you who have a Capricorn Moon or Capricorn Ascendant, we're starting off the week with the moon back in your 12th house. And so some of you could have a little bit more psychic inclination coming into this week. This could be a good time to meditate, a good time to have a dream journal, a good time to look out for different symbols. You could pull a lot of creativity and inspiration from the subconscious and pour this into your work life. So this can be a very good time for this. Some of you, though, may be too immersed into this world, and so you want to focus on your health and routine as well. Some of these things can be a factor that can actually affect your health. This is the moon back in that 12th house of your mental health and aspecting over to the 6th house of illnesses and conflicts. So you want to be careful here with some changes and fluctuations to your health. From there, the moon is going to shift into your first house, where there could be some changes within yourself, where you are changing your identity, changing your appearance, changing some major factors in your life. And this can affect your partner. So you do want to be open and communicating with your partner about any sort of changes that you're making. This can negatively impact your partnerships. From there, the moon is going to shift into your second house. And so you could see some fluctuation and changes in your actual finances. For the most part, depending on how everything's placed in your chart, this is going to be a good thing, though. You have a new moon and Mercury in that second house. So you can acquire new wealth, you can acquire new gains in life through others. This is aspecting over to that 8th house. So you could do very well in business and finances during this time. All of a sudden, you could get new increases coming in with that 8th house factor of sudden changes. From there, the moon is going to shift into your 3rd house of communication. So you could find yourself more emotional, more empathetic in your communication, more understanding. You could also find yourself connected to your siblings or anyone close to you, family wise, coming into this week. From there, the moon is going to aspect over to your 9th house. And so this could be a factor in education as well. Maybe you are changing your opinions, having more of an open mind where you're able to gather new knowledge, learn a new skill or talent, get some insight and support from a counselor, a teacher, from your father at this time. The moon is also going to be in this house with the sun. And so some of you, again, could be getting a lot of counsel from your father during this time. You could have a lot of brilliant ideas coming through with the sun activating this 3rd house of communication. So a lot of new ideas, a lot of new insights can really help you in your education, leveling up, looking at future plans, gaining new knowledge, new insight coming into this week. So that was your weekly horoscope for all zodiac signs, along with your card of the week. I hope you all enjoy this. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like as well as a comment. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell. If you'd like to learn more about Vedic astrology in depth, I do have a class available in the Facebook group, Astrology Lessons with Daquan Jones, and on the Patreon page. All of that is down below in the description, along with the comments. And I will keep you all updated when this becomes available on Udemy as well, for those of you who are waiting to learn those classes on Udemy. If you have any sort of topics that you'd like me to talk about regarding Vedic astrology in future videos, feel free to leave it down below in the comments. If this resonated with you on some level or you have any additional questions, feel free to leave that down below in the comments as well. And I hope you all have a great day. I will see you in the next video.